The after-sun effect, passengers stranded, chaos at stations and people now homeless. After yesterday's heat sparked fires across the country, the clean-up begins, with families counting the cost of Britain's unprecedented heat wave.
Our life is there and you keep thinking, oh, I won't see that anymore, I haven't got that. And that's when it hits home.
But the impact of the heat is still being felt tonight. We'll have the latest also tonight. One of these two will become Prime Minister. It's Sunak versus Truss in the race for the top job. Petrol, energy and food prices rocket at the fastest rate in decades, leaving many feeling the squeeze. Bidding farewell to Debs, family and friends say a heartfelt goodbye to the cancer campaigner. And the build-up to the quarter-final is well underway as England gear up to face Spain in the Euros.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. Britain is tonight counting the cost of the widespread damage caused by the extreme heat, which saw temperatures rise above 40 Celsius for the first time ever in the UK. Fire brigades across the country declared major incidents as they fought to contain wildfires. And there are warnings tonight. The UK is going to have to learn to live with such extreme weather events. Sejal Karia has the latest.
It is a scene of utter devastation. Home after smouldering home lying in ruins. In the midst of the scorched landscape surrounding Wellington. Possessions lost, lives that will never be the same again. Among this row on the left is number 17, where Carol Hager had lived for almost 58 years, raising her two sons. Now, gone.
Within seconds, well, minutes, it was coming round towards us and it was out at the back of the old schoolhouse, and their tree all went up and their shed went up and everything. And when number 20's fence started going, we just grabbed our things and just came straight out. I'm devastated, absolutely devastated, because our life is there and you keep thinking, oh, I won't see that anymore, I haven't got that. And that's when it hits home.
Tinder dry land and scorched earth 200 miles north in Barnsley, and the same devastating result. Taking just minutes for entire houses to be gutted. People escaped with their lives, but lost everything else.
Privet were on fire and it was spreading over here. So I got hose pipe in here because it's dry grass. Hosing me somewhere else there, and I was just trying my best.
In Maltby, a fire tore through a row of 8 terraced houses. The speed and severity of the wildfires meant South Yorkshire struggled, like the capital, and declared a major incident.
There wasn't any additional resource practically anywhere in the country. And we need to really start looking at that moving forwards in terms of whether or not local services are resourced to the changing levels of risk that we experienced yesterday, especially if that's not the only time that we're going to experience such a high level surge in our demand due to the extreme temperatures that we're starting to see.
These fires will be seared into the memory of those who now have to rebuild their lives. And while the flames are now extinguished, the danger isn't over. The heat still poses further risks. Alongside those risks, a warning from government that we must all now learn to live with such extreme events caused by climate change. And leaders of fire services across the country also say that they must now think very carefully about how the country can be better prepared in the future.
Sejal, thank you. Well, as we said, South Yorkshire was one of many regions badly hit by the consequences of the extreme heat. Well, our North of England reporter, Sangeeta Lal, is in Sheffield, where there's been another fire today. Sangeeta, this is very much an ongoing problem, isn't it?
It really is. Crews are working so hard today to put out more wildfires that have started, and we've actually spoken to the teams. They said in the last 24 hours they've had to deal with almost 300 call-outs across South Yorkshire when they would normally deal with about 70, and that has led to real problems because in a situation like that they'd normally lean on other regional resources, but those resources are already stretched. And actually when we arrived here, only 4 officers were able to get this fire under control as it was spreading inch by inch closer to houses. It actually reached gardens. Garden sheds were on fire. Neighbours were turning up with buckets of water to stop it reaching to people's homes. But it is now under control, and this is happening across the country. In Grantham, crews there are trying to dampen down 3,000 square metres of a field that's on fire. A school there has been evacuated. There are no reports of casualties, but the problem is how dry the land is after the heat yesterday. It doesn't take much to set it alight, but there is good news. There is rain forecast, which will hopefully make it all a lot safer.
OK, Sangeeta, thank you. Well, the effects of the weather were still being felt on the railways today after the heat wave and wildfires damaged tracks, signals and overhead wires. Dozens of train services were cancelled, many more were disrupted, and thousands of passengers felt the impact. Well, our consumer editor Chris Troy is over at King's Cross in London with the latest. Chris, can you tell us what the situation is like now?
Well, yeah, I mean, things have been so bad that today Network Rail has announced a new task force to look at how rail can become more resilient heat in the future. Let me show you some of the disruption. Starting here at King's Cross, there have been no trains between London and Peterborough through until about 2:30 this afternoon. Now there is still some remaining disruption on the line. Across on the West Coast main line, there were no direct trains from Scotland to London through until about 1 o'clock today. You can imagine the backlog that's created, and there is continuing disruption. Birmingham New Street was one of the worst stations affected. They had problems with the overhead power lines. There is still some disruption in that region. A lot of passengers are still affected by these problems. So the best advice tonight from this industry is check with National Rail Inquiries before you set off. You can't do anything, of course, about the weather, but perhaps you can change your travel plans.
OK, Chris, thanks very much. OK, away from the heat battle to the political one now. We're down to the final 2 in the race to decide who will be the next Prime Minister. Today we learned it'll be either former Chancellor Rishi Sunak or Foreign Secretary Liz Truss. Boris Johnson made his last appearance at Prime Minister's Questions today, cheered by most of his own MPs, but attacked as delusional by Labour. Our Deputy Political Editor Anushka Asthana has more.
Conservative MPs have had their say, and now this is the choice for the next Prime Minister.
I'm Liz Truss.
I'm Rishi Sunak.
I've delivered dozens of trade deals.
I'm proud of my record.
We need to cut taxes.
Something for nothing economics.
This was the result MPs were most excited to hear, and it was pretty close.
The numbers of votes cast for each candidate is as follows. Mordaunt, 105. Sunak, 137, Truss 113.
That result sets us up for a bitter political clash this summer. She's already accused him of driving us to the edge of recession. He says her ideas are socialist. Be straight with us. Do you regret the blue-on-blue attacks, and will they stop?
Well, what we've seen is actually a debate about ideas, which is very healthy, and it's good for us to debate ideas to make sure that we get the policies right for the country. But crucially, for our members, I am also the person who can beat Keir Starmer in the next election, and that should be uppermost in their minds.
Claiming he can beat Labour. He said it more than once, and it's clearly going to be central to Rishi Sunak's campaign. But guess who thinks it too?
What I believe is that lowering taxes, opening up opportunities is going to help us deliver the economic growth that Britain needs, and it's also going to help deliver us the next election. I can win against Keir Starmer.
It wasn't all smiles. There was heartache for the Penny Mordaunt for PM campaign.
I'm obviously gutted, we all are, but equally I think we've done something in this campaign that's quite important. We may have not got through to the last 2, but I think we've lit a flame for a model of Conservative politics that is unifying.
But before Tory members speed towards a new PM, they say goodbye to this unique one. Boris Johnson with this advice for his successor at his final PMQs.
Number 1, stay close to the Americans, stick up for the Ukrainians, cut taxes and deregulate wherever you can.
There was a little dig.
I love the Treasury, but remember, that if we'd always listened to the Treasury, we wouldn't have built the M25 or the Channel Tunnel.
A warning.
Focus on the road ahead, but always remember to check the rear view mirror.
And a goodbye.
Hasta la vista, baby. Thank you.
Until next time, eh? It ended with warm applause from most but not all Conservatives. Look closely and you'll see Theresa May isn't clapping the man who some say brought her premiership down. Now to the next leader, Anushka Astana, ITV News.
Well, now that we're down to the final two candidates, the focus turns to the Conservative Party membership as they will decide who'll be the next Prime Minister. Party members will get their ballots from the 1st of August and they can vote online or by post as soon as they have them. On Friday, September the 2nd, voting will close and all ballots will be counted over the weekend. And the following Monday, the country will learn who the next Prime Minister will be. Well, we'll talk to our political editor, Robert Peston, in a second about his thoughts on the final two. But let's go first to our UK editor, Paul Brand, who's in the most marginal seat helped by the Conservatives, Bury North. And Paul, you've got some guests with you, haven't you, who will have the final say on this selection process?
Yeah, because Charlene, as you say, MPs have had their say in this contest. Now it's over to this other exclusive electorate, about 200,000 or so, give or take, Conservative Party members at Conservative clubs like here in Walmsley will pick our next Prime Minister for us. And among those who have a vote in this contest are Carol Bernstein and Barbara Fogg. Good evening to both of you. So, Carol, what do you make of the final two candidates?
Pleased that Liz Truss got through. Not so pleased about Rishi Sunak.
What's wrong with Rishi Sunak?
It's not that there's anything wrong with him because he's done a really good job during the pandemic. But I think he's going to be a real tough sell in Bury to sell as part of the campaign. He's not popular because of the raise in taxation and some of the, his background information about the Partygate and the fact that his wife's not paying her taxes.
OK, well, pretty clear view from you, Carol. Barbara, who are you backing in this contest now?
Liz Truss.
Why is that?
She's the only candidate to vote for. Rishi can't be trusted.
Why not?
Because of his past, because he's a backstabber. There's no two ways to say that. A lot of people still believe in Boris, but we've got to now get behind Liz to see what Liz can produce for the Conservatives.
A lot of members have been saying to me here today that they support Liz Truss. I mean, it's not as if you're an unrepresentative sample of people I've spoken to, but do you think she has the charisma and the personality, like Boris Johnson did, to win an election?
Boris is full of charisma. Liz is a different person altogether. I think she could be feisty, given the chance. I think she will have the integrity that's needed for a Prime Minister to take this country forward. And yes, I wish her well, and I hope she wins.
All right, thanks, Barbara. I mean, Carol, do you think that maybe one day your party might live to regret getting rid of Boris Johnson?
I mean, yeah, he's been a great Prime Minister, and the fact that he's done everything he set out to do, you can't take away from him. He rolled out the vaccinations, we got Brexit done. However, I was disappointed with him not owning up on the things that he should have owned up to.
All right, Carol, thanks so much. Barbara, thanks so much to you too. So mine's, I've got to say, are pretty made up here in Bury, at least the handful of people I've spoken to this afternoon. Everyone else in this contest who has a vote has until September to decide the direction of our country on behalf of all of us.
OK, Paul, thanks very much. OK, to Robert now. You're in the studio, aren't you, where you're preparing for your show tonight? But before you get to that, what does all of what happened today tell us about the government we're going to get in September?
So there is one very big divide between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, which is over tax. Liz Truss says she wants big cuts in taxes for individuals and for business pretty much immediately, whereas Rishi Sunak has said that although he wants to cut taxes in the long term, it would be reckless to do so until inflation is brought down, until the public finances are in better shape. But if viewers think that the change of government is going to be a massive break from the Johnson years, well, you know, they're going to have to think again. I mean, both of these were big beasts in Boris Johnson's cabinet, in Rishi Sunak's case, till very recently indeed. And, for example, if somebody thinks that a new Prime Minister will lead to massively better relations with the EU, I don't see that coming. If viewers think that, for example, that controversial policy of expelling asylum seekers to Rwanda might change, nope, they're both signed up to that. But in terms of a vision for Britain, we haven't yet got that from either of the candidates, and that's what we will be looking for, you know, sort of more than the sort of tropes that they come up with, which is that they owe this country so much. I do think they will be challenged when it comes to the unity of their party. We shouldn't forget that Penny Mordaunt was the only candidate left on the ballot paper who represented a totally clean start. Almost a third of Tory MPs wanted her. Do I think they will immediately be loyal to the new Prime Minister? History would say that's not going to happen. So I think whoever wins is going to inherit quite a divided Conservative Party.
Yeah, they may well do. Robert, thanks very much for that. Well, a massive task facing whoever wins that final vote and thereby becomes the next Prime Minister will be the cost of living crisis, the stark reality of which was reflected by the latest inflation figures. The rate of inflation surged to a new 40-year high today, reaching levels not seen since the early 1980s, with the Consumer Prices Index reaching 9.4% last month. That means it pulls even further away from the Bank of England's 2% target rate. It's been driven by another huge leap in fuel prices, up by more than 40%, and rising food prices, up almost 10% in the last year. Our social affairs correspondent Sarah Corker spoke to some of those who are feeling it most.
Inflation is setting a relentless pace. At this factory in Burnley, materials come from around the globe to make window and door frames. The cost of everything is rising, and with so much machinery here, it's an energy-guzzling operation.
It's a good chance that our electricity will go up by 100%, and whilst we're quite small users of gas, there are fears that that actually could go up by 400%.
Can you absorb that, or does it get passed on to customers?
Yeah, we can't absorb it. The reality is no one's operating on margins that give you that opportunity.
Fuel costs have also surged, and it's places like Burnley, where more people rely on cars and wages are lower than in cities, that have been hit the hardest.
Food prices are rising at their fastest rate in over a decade. Low-fat milk is 26% more expensive than a year ago. Flour is up 19%. Tinned veg is on average 14% more expensive, and eggs have increased by 11.5%, and all this adds up. At Burnley's community grocery, members can get the basics at a more affordable cost.
You can get around £25 to £30 worth of food for £4. Lots of our members are working full-time, their partners are working full-time, and they're still struggling to make ends meet.
Everybody needs help at the moment, and friends and family come as well. And it's a lot of help with 4 or 5 kids.
We're actually on benefits, but they're not going up at all in line with inflation. So places like this are a necessity at the minute.
Millions of families are already facing tough choices.
I'm having to rely on food banks from my girls' school.
Victoria is being supported by the charity Action for Children. She's a full-time carer for her 4 kids. She's cut back on everything, and it's still not enough.
It just makes me feel horrible, sad, and sometimes you just don't want to be here because it's so hard. And then you just have to sit there and think to yourself, come on, fight back, you can do this.
And with another round of rising energy bills due in the autumn, the cost of living will be pushed even higher. Sarah Corker, ITV News in Burnley.
Well, to our economics editor, Joel Hills now, who's outside the Bank of England. Joel, how long will this crisis last, do you think, and what can be done to bring inflation under control?
Well, the Bank of England argues that the inflation's been driven higher by a series of economic shocks and things will get worse before they get better. Now, the good news is the upward pressure on prices that was caused by the pandemic appears to be easing, but I'm afraid the upward pressure caused by the war in Ukraine is intensifying. The awkward truth here is that Vladimir Putin's ability to restrict supplies of Russian gas and things like Ukrainian wheat are making us considerably poorer. What's happening to energy bills is absolutely mind-boggling. They will rise by around 50% again in October. This winter will make no mistake, be absolutely horrific for many households in spite of the support that the government has put already on the table. Now, the UK has another issue. The labour market is tight, firms are struggling to recruit, pay is rising, not by enough to prevent a very sharp slump in our living standards, but potentially by enough to generate another round of inflation. So in the months ahead, it is possible that as households tighten their belts, it will create a recession so severe that it will bring inflation back down to target quite quickly. It's possible, though, that the Bank of England will decide it needs to hike interest rates quite aggressively. Either way, the outlook is absolutely grim. For what it's worth, the markets expect bank rate to reach 3% by the end of the year.
All right, Joel, thank you. Well, there's plenty more to come on the ITV Evening News, including the man jailed for killing his wife and hiding her body in a septic tank for decades. An inquiry triggered by an ITV News investigation finds some social housing is not fit for humans. And at 7, a special interview with the parents of Charlie Gard, taken off life support aged 11 months 5 years ago, on their campaign for Charlie's Law. We'll have all that after the break.
Imagine driving without compromise. Pure electric for the city. An SUV for life's adventures. Power on demand. And hybrid to take you further. When all you want is everything. The new Vauxhall Grandland plug-in hybrid. Electric. And then some.
If you've got outstanding finance on your car, relax. Just bring along your final settlement agreement. And We Buy Any Car will do all the work for you, so you can just take it easy.
Isn't that right, Dan? Less talking, more peddling.
To find out how much your car's worth in 30 seconds, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Discover our amazing range of premium beauty at your local Boots with click and collect, including Fenty Beauty, MAC and more. This year, summer better be ready. Boots, with you for life.
Even from a young age, I was fearless.
I didn't care that I was a girl playing a boys' team. I just wanted to keep scoring.
Make my family proud.
And inspire young girls
to write their own story. Pandora. For every story.
Welcome back. An 89-year-old retired pig farmer who murdered his wife in 1982 and dumped her body in a septic tank was jailed for life today. The judge told David Venables he must serve at least 18 years, meaning he wouldn't be able to apply for a parole until the age of 107. The body of his wife, Brenda, was only found during work to empty the tank 3 years ago. Ellie Pitt reports.
She was described in court as polite and proper, by her family as gentle and quiet. Brenda Venables was murdered by her husband. David Venables lived for 40 years as a free man, but was told today he'd spend at least the next 18 behind bars. Brenda's surviving nephews and nieces revealed the pain that some of their relatives didn't live to see this day.
It's impossible to come to terms with the fact that Brenda's life was taken by the very person who should have loved and protected her. He betrayed Brenda and her family. His actions and continued lies have caused family and friends untold distress over 40 years.
The court heard that the couple had been living at this farm when Mr. Venables reported his wife missing to police in May 1982. Her disappearance was covered by the local press. But jurors were told that searches of nearby lanes found nothing until 2019, when the farm's new owners emptied the underground septic tank. Inside there was a skull, other bones and a pair of women's tights.
I'm sure David Venables thought that he'd live all his life without
any repercussions, without being found guilty, without going to court, without us finding Brenda. So finally we have been able to get justice.
During the trial, prosecutors claimed Venables wanted Brenda out of the way, and jurors heard details of a 14-year affair he had. Later, the court was told that Venables suggested serial killer Fred West could be responsible for his wife's death. But sentencing Mr. Venables today, the judge mentioned his use of the septic tank and said what he did with Brenda's body was disgusting and repulsive. The judge told Venables his luck ran out in 2019. Tonight, his prison sentence begins for the life he took 4 decades ago. Ellie Pitt, ITV News, Worcester.
A new multi-billion-pound nuclear power station has been given the green light by the government. Sizewell C in Suffolk will generate enough electricity for 6 million homes, but critics say officials have yet to explain how it'll be paid for. Free access to NHS fertility treatment is to be expanded under the government's new women's health strategy. The policy will also see more funding for mobile breast cancer screening, as well as mandatory training for doctors in England aimed at tackling the gender health gap. And the prominent hunter, Mark Hankinson, has won his appeal against a conviction for encouraging illegal fox hunting. The 61-year-old allegedly told members of the hunting office it was possible to use legal trail hunting as a smokescreen for criminal activity. But the court ruled his words were open to interpretation. A damning report by MPs was issued today in the wake of the ITV News investigation into Britain's appalling social housing conditions. The report by the Levelling Up Committee says some social housing has deteriorated so badly that, to use its own word, it was uninhabitable. Our political correspondent Dan Howells, who carried out our investigation, has this report.
The squalor, damage and disrepair in which families are forced to live stains and shames the landlords responsible. Now an inquiry by MPs, prompted by a year-long ITV News investigation into social housing conditions, says tenants have been badly let down across the board and change is desperately needed.
What we found was failures at every point. Failures of government in terms of inadequate funding for social housing providers, failures of social housing providers, housing associations and councils in not looking after their stock properly and not listening to the concerns of their tenants. It was back to a situation I thought we got beyond, where poor tenants only needed poor housing.
The inquiry found that some of England's social housing conditions are unfit for human habitation, that it's undeniable that the poor treatment of tenants and discrimination is down to a stigma attached to being in social housing. It recommends significantly increasing levels of compensation up to £25,000. The current average is £260, and to establish a permanent national body to represent tenants. In June last year, Nicole Walters' ceiling collapsed for a second time where her son usually sits.
I felt like I literally could have lost my life within that property.
She gave evidence at the inquiry in Parliament and today welcomed the findings.
It's nice to now have somebody in a privileged position that is able to hear my story and then identify my case with other people's cases to see that this is an issue and they are actually doing something about it.
But is the government listening? Today, ministers laid the blame at the door of landlords.
Well, look, councils have to take primary responsibility for the housing that they offer, and if any accommodation is unfit for people to live in, then that's something which they have a responsibility to remedy. They are funded to do so.
But today's report says successive governments have fuelled this crisis, which has robbed so many of the basic right to a decent home. Daniel Hewitt, ITV News.
We are watching the ITV Evening News. Here's what's still ahead before Emmerdale. Family and friends pay their respects to the cancer campaigner Dame Deborah James as she's laid to rest. Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall meet veterans of the Falklands War 40 years on.
I'm in Brighton ahead of England's crucial quarter-final game in the Euros against Spain.
Joy as Jake Whiteman becomes Britain's first gold medal winner at this year's World Athletics Championships.
And as temperatures finally cool, I'll have more on the impact the heat waves had across the country, plus what we can expect in the days ahead.
But first, it's almost 5 years since the parents of 11-month-old Charlie Gard ended their long and very public legal battle to keep their baby son alive. Connie Yates and Chris Gard were blocked from taking Charlie, who had a rare genetic defect causing severe brain damage, to America for experimental treatment. He was then taken off life support and died. Now living in the Scottish Highlands, they told our Scotland reporter Louise Scott how they're campaigning for a Charlie's Law to give parents more say in the medical treatment of their children.
It's nearly 5 years on, and I just can't understand as a parent that you just lose those rights. You can't try and save your child.
The peace and tranquility of the Scottish Highlands is often used as an escape, but for Charlie Gard's parents, no distance or time can erase the pain of losing their child, and the added trauma of a High Court battle has made them determined to change the law.
We worked very hard with, doctors who openly opposed us during Charlie's case to try and find a way that works for both doctors and for both parents. One of the misconceptions of Charlie's Law is that it's, giving parents can do what they want, but that is not the case. It's finding a kind of middle ground that suits both the doctors and the families, so that some resolution can be sought before it gets to court.
How did it feel working with doctors who originally opposed to Charlie's case?
Well, initially it was very difficult, but for the end goal of it, it's all worth it. But because both parties agree that it's not right the way it is.
Connie and Chris endured 5 months of legal disputes in 2017, while Charlie remained in hospital, quickly deteriorating. The experience was so traumatising that they now avoid news reports of similar cases, but say they still support other families fighting for their children.
Whatever your views are, I sympathise with the families involved, because I know what it's like. Me and Connie both know what it's like to have to go to the Royal Courts of Justice and have a judge sitting up the top and saying, what's going to happen with your child, whether they live or die. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemies.
On Friday, the family of another boy, 12-year-old Archie Battersby, who's been in a coma for 3 months, were told by a High Court judge that ending Archie's treatment was in his best interests. His family are now appealing, a situation Charlie's parents know all too well.
There's no words I can say or Connie can say that will make them feel any better. We've been there, we've lost a child through the court process, so our thoughts are just with the family and Archie.
Charlie's Law aims to stop more medical cases going through the courts. The bill is working its way through Parliament, with a review taking place in October. The family hope the law could be implemented next year, ensuring Charlie's legacy lives on.
If Charlie can help prevent other parents going through what we did, then we're proud. We couldn't be more proud of him anyway. All during his fight, we were just, I think pride is probably the word that sticks out the most.
The Charlie Gard Foundation has struggled financially during the pandemic. Now, in a fundraising effort, Connie has made the decision to cut her hair for the first time since Charlie died.
I'm quite attached to it in a way, because I think, well, I had this hair when Charlie was here, do you know what I mean? But at the same time, people lose their hair every day and they're brave about that. So I'm going to be brave about this.
And it's the newest member of the family that's ensuring their days are a little brighter.
It doesn't get easier when you lose a child at all. But we do have a reason to smile now, our little Oliver.
Oliver's obviously his own person, but it gives us an idea of what Charlie may have looked like had he grown up and stuff, and to watch Oliver take his first steps and his first words, and it's just, it's so beautiful to watch, and we're just so lucky to have him. Obviously he's too young to know that he's not here anymore, but he, whenever he sees a photo, he says Charlie and brother and stuff, which is kind of beautiful but heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah, we just wish he was here too, obviously.
Yeah.
Shame.
Is it a train?
Choo-choo.
5 years on from Charlie's death, he continues to play a crucial role in his family's life, and the hope a new law in his name can bring relief for other parents in the future. Louise Scott, ITV News, Inverness.
One more. Okay.
Now let's get an update on what's making the news tonight. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak and Foreign Secretary Liz Truss have made it into the final two in the race to decide the next Prime Minister. The rate of inflation rose to a new 40-year high today as the cost of food went up almost 10% on last year. And the country is enduring a second day of fires triggered by the heat wave. Close friends and family came together to bid farewell to the cancer campaigner who caught the hearts and imagination of the country. The private funeral of Dame Deborah James, who died from bowel cancer last month, took place in London. Lorraine Kelly and Tom and Giovanna Fletcher were among those who attended, as Rishi Davda reports.
A remarkable woman, remembered by those she loved the most. Dame Deborah James's family led the procession to the church where the campaigner was laid to rest today. They were joined by famous friends who came to pay their respects to someone who never lost her passion for life.
She had this amazing way of getting through every hiccup that came along and dealing with it with her customary sort of humour and positivity, and then she'd bounce back. But sort of at the back of one's mind, I suppose one knew what the end point was, but you sort of imagined she was immortal really, and it was never going to happen.
The former deputy head was diagnosed with bowel cancer in 2016, going on to document her treatment on social media. In the weeks before she died, the self-titled Bowel Babe raised more than £7 million for charity and was awarded a damehood. She left a lasting impression on the people around her.
I still remember her face for all the time. Very smiley, very absolutely beautiful lady. It's awesome. I mean, it's phenomenal what she raised in funds and helped many thousands of people.
I have the glam cancer.
It started with a podcast tackling the taboos around cancer and went so much further, inspiring others going through the same pain.
I think that's what we shared. We shared this passion of don't be shy, don't not talk about the things that other people might find uncomfortable. We need to get those discussions out there.
Her children read poems as they said goodbye to their mother, a woman whose legacy will be using her cancer to bring about change. Rishi Davda, ITV News.
Charles and Camilla were on board the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth today for a ceremony marking this year's 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. In the carrier's huge hangar, they met veterans of the campaign as well as serving personnel and their families. Our royal editor Chris Shipp reports.
There was a moment this afternoon for today's sailors, soldiers and airmen to remember the task their predecessors took on 40 years ago. Prince Charles and Camilla joined veterans of the Falklands conflict in Portsmouth today to honour the 255 British lives lost in the South Atlantic. From this harbour in 1982, a task force of more than 120 ships and submarines set sail for the Falkland Islands, 8,000 miles away following the Argentine invasion. Among the ships, which would not return, was HMS Sheffield.
We glanced to our right and we see this fireball coming towards us, and he immediately recognised it as Exocet. The paint was peeling, our boots were melting. Everyone I'd just been talking to in the galley were killed.
20 men on board Sheffield lost their lives. Another Argentine attack took out the helicopters, which led to the now famous Yomp, the trek by 4-5 Commando from one side of the island to the other. A medic who did that 16-mile Yomp spoke today of the trauma he still carries.
I just sort of fell into a black hole. I drank excessively and I didn't seek help. But
And it's a reminder of the long-lasting impact of military conflict on people like yourself.
I guess it is really, yeah.
4 decades on it might be, but a reason to remember how the scars from the battlefield are never quick to heal. Chris Ship, ITV News, Portsmouth.
The American city of Boston has been chosen to host the Duke of Cambridge's next Earthshot Prize Awards ceremony in December. The inaugural ceremony for the £50 million environment competition was held in London last October. The award aims to discover groundbreaking solutions to repair the planet. Amazon is suing the administrators of more than 10,000 Facebook groups over fake reviews it says were written in exchange for money or free products. Facebook's owner Meta said it's working with Amazon on the matter. And Henrik Stenson has been removed as Europe's Ryder Cup captain with immediate effect. He's understood to be on the verge of signing up for the Saudi-backed breakaway Live Group Golf Series. The Ryder Cup will take place in Rome in September. Football now, and England's Lionesses made a rampant start to the group stages of their Euro 2022 campaign, winning 3 out of 3 and scoring a hatful of goals. Tonight, though, it's win or bust in their quarter-final match against Spain in Brighton, and Amy Lewis is there for us. Now, Amy, they are favourites to progress, but it's a pressure match, isn't it?
It is indeed. It is England's first match of the tournament in the knockout stages, so there are no second chances. It is once again a sellout match here in Brighton. All 30,000 tickets for the game have sold out. England got off to a record-breaking start in the group stages, scoring 14 goals whilst keeping a clean sheet. It is then little surprise that the fans believe they can go all the way. They are in full voice and full of confidence. And who can blame them when the Lionesses are yet to concede a single goal this competition?
We've been to every group stage game, so we really wanted to be here today.
Yeah.
How do you think they're going to get on?
They're going to win.
How are they going to get on tonight, do you think?
They're going to win.
Handmade? Pillowcases? How long did they take you to make?
Oh, about half an hour.
In the group stages, the Lionesses scored goals in record numbers.
Rousseau! Oh, that is absolutely brilliant!
But tonight will be their toughest test yet when they face Spain, one of the favourites. England's coach Serena Wiegman missed their last match after testing positive with COVID, but she is back on the touchline tonight.
You talk about pressure all the time, and we talk about football. And football under the highest pressure against the best opponents we have in Europe. So what we're trying to do is just play football, play at our best, and try to use our strengths and trying to exploit the weaknesses of the opponent.
Over the past couple of days, they've been managing the soaring heat and trying to stay cool-headed by taking an ice-cold dip. A distraction perhaps from what is coming, knockout football and a country full of expectation.
I hope we've done enough in the group stages, and I think we have to interest people and get them on our journey with us, and I hope they stay with us now. It's a great opportunity. It's hopefully going to be nice weather, and I hope everybody enjoys it as much as we are, yeah.
These fans are lucky enough to have the best ticket in town, a chance to see England when there are no second chances. Amy Lewis, ITV News, Brighton.
Good luck, ladies. We'll have some more sporting success after the break. It was a family affair. Pride for Britain's Jake Whiteman as he makes history in the 1500 metres.
And with thunderstorms already moving in, hot on the heels of the heat wave, I'll have a full forecast next.
Join me and Joe for that in just a minute. weather now, and after the heat comes the rain. A Met Office warnings in place for thunderstorms across parts of England tonight. Temperatures, though, have now returned to more like what we would expect at this time of the year. Joe Blythe is at Garden Bridgewater in Worsley for us. Joe, quite a dramatic change in conditions overnight, wasn't it?
Such a difference, Charlene. I mean, it's so much more comfortable being outside this evening compared with yesterday. Across Salford, yesterday it reached 38 Celsius, and across in the UK, the whole of the country, provisionally our hottest day ever recorded. July already stacking up to be one of the driest on record, and there's more dry weather in the short-term forecast. So how do we all adapt? How do we keep our beautiful parks and gardens and green spaces healthy and vibrant as we go through the summer months, with still over a month of summer to go and lots of dry weather ahead? Well, here at RHS Garden Bridgewater, they have some fantastic ways to keep all the thousands of plants happy and thriving. And I caught up with team leader James Hall earlier on, and he had some advice for all of us in the warming climate in our gardens.
Things like how we water is really important. So watering early in the morning or at night is great, because if you water in the daytime there's a lot of evaporation, and just being careful how we water. So, you know, sort of focusing on the plant. If you can use a watering can rather than a hose, because I know anything like me, you get a hose, you start splashing it around and get a bit carried away, whereas a watering can, you're a bit more considered.
Some great advice there for all of us, but will there be any much needed rain in the forecast? Let's take a look.
It's going to be hot, so you may be tempted to go for a dunk later. Heinz Garlic Sauce sponsors ITV National Weather.
Thankfully tonight, far more comfortable for sleeping. Many places last night not falling below 21, 22 degrees. And rurally tonight, it's going to be much cooler, even in our towns and cities. So something good news-wise there. Tomorrow, a cooler day for all of us across the country. Quite a dry forecast ahead. There will be a few thundery downpours across many parts as we go through this evening and overnight. But in general, very little rain going forward. In a bit more detail then, those heavy thundery downpours sweeping in across central and southern areas over the next couple of hours or so. But then high pressure will be building in again from the west, and that gives us a fine end to the week with some sunshine and temperatures beginning to climb just a little bit yet again. Into this evening then, for most places quietening down. Any thundery downpours fairly isolated, and these will die away as we go through the early hours of tomorrow. Rurally perhaps down to around 8 or 9 Celsius tonight, so far more comfortable for sleeping and largely dry as we head into tomorrow. On to tomorrow's details. Quite a cloudy start for many places. There will be some sunshine across northern Scotland, Northern Ireland and down in the south and east, but many central areas will be under that cloud with a few showers through the course of the day. The best temperatures tomorrow will be in the southeast again, where it will be climbing. It'll be another very pleasant day. And looking ahead towards Friday and the weekend, some showers in the forecast, but very little rain going forward. The weekend, it will be warming up, and next week warming up again, but nothing like the heights we saw yesterday.
Heinz Garlic Sauce sponsors ITV National Weather.
So they'll have to keep watering here at RHS Garden Bridgewater. Very little rain in the forecast. It's actually a lovely evening. I'm going to enjoy the gorgeous flowers. Back to you, Charlene.
I'll do enjoy it, Joe. Thank you. To the list of legendary British runners was another name that was added tonight, Jake Whiteman. He produced a stunning surge to win the 1500 metres gold at the World Athletics Championships in Oregon. And the stadium commentator who watched him win, well, it was his dad, who understandably couldn't resist a burst of family pride, as Geraint Vincent reports.
No one really gave Jake Whiteman much of a chance as they lined up for the 1500 metres final. He, meanwhile, had other ideas. The race set off at a ferocious pace, but the 28-year-old Scot got himself in near the front early on.
Jake Whiteman and Josh Kerr will just be happy to get tucked in on this first 400 metres.
And he stayed there. Then with about 150 metres to go, he made his move, powering down the home straight.
Jake Whiteman's trying to win it here.
To win what was a thrilling finish.
Gold for Jake Whiteman!
Still in shock with it a little bit. It's not really sunk in or anything like that, but it's cool. Yeah, it's nice feeling, obviously.
Now, athletics is very often a family affair, and Jake's dad was, of course, in Oregon to watch his boy race. But he was also working as the stadium announcer, so he had to try to be as impartial as possible as he commentated on Jake's victory.
I've almost gone too much the other way with being neutral. I'm looking forward to watching it again, because it'll be like that forever. You'll always have that moment with 150 to go where you think, has he gone too soon, or are they coming back? And then it'll be the relief every time you watch it that no, he's okay, he's okay.
Jeff is also Jake's coach, so after the race he went down to give his son a hug.
All right, Commonwealth, thank you.
And remind him that he has now to get ready for the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham next week.
World champion, mate. There you go.
Time for a drink before all that though, Dad. He is the world champion after all. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Just before we go, someone in the UK has tonight come forward to claim the National Lottery's biggest ever jackpot.
Welcome to Tuesday's Euro Millions draw and UK Millionaire Maker.
The single winning ticket for last night's Euro Millions prize draw is worth a mind-boggling, listen to this, £195.7 million. So, if your claim checks out, you are now worth more than Adele, Harry Maguire and Emma Raducanu combined. Congratulations. That's it for now. Nina will be here with news at 10. But from all of us here on the team, thanks for watching. Have a good afternoon, evening. Bye-bye.